Thank you. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. We'll hop straight into the next session today, the third session, which is place markers. We're going to hear some case studies. So Queensland, as we know, is a large and diverse state, and today we are absolutely delighted to highlight three outstanding case studies of heritage tourism as part of our next session, place markers. The Workshops Rail Museum in Ipswich, the Brisbane Greeters Program and the Qantas Founders Museum in Longreach are forging ahead and creating dynamic experiences that tourists, whether they be domestic or international, can savour, remember and share with others. So let's hear more about those places and what makes them tick. First of all, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Andrew Moritz, the Director of the Workshops Rail Museum and Queensland Museum. Andrew was appointed as the inaugural director of the Workshops Rail Museum, a campus of the Queensland Museum Network, in 2001. Prior to taking up the position, Andrew worked in the museum sector in Victoria as director of the National Wool Museum in Geelong, project manager with Museum Victoria, executive director, Museums Australia Victoria, and house museum manager, Werribee Park Mansion. Since opening in 2002, the Workshops Rail Museum has been recognised with awards from state and national tourism bodies for its achievements in showcasing culture and heritage. Please make him welcome, Andrew Moritz.
Okay, thank you very much for that welcome, Gillian, and I too am sharing, I think, the bug that's been going around, so if I do descend into a coughing fit, please excuse me. It is a great pleasure to be here today to talk to you about the Workshops Rail Museum. Can I just see how many people in the room have actually been out there? Okay, I'm doing well. That's probably the best response to that question that I've had at all the forums I've spoken to, so I must be doing something right. But certainly the challenge of rail heritage in Ipswich is not to be underestimated, and I guess I've got 13 years under my belt now of trying to make that work, and we've done some amazing things with the site and certainly had some amazing successes, which some of which I'll share with you today and some of which I'll talk about in terms of what we see as going forward as the opportunities as well. So just the brief bit of the history of the railway workshops. This is the birthplace of rail in Queensland. 1865, the railway comes to Queensland with the first ever train line operating from Ipswich to Grantchester, about 40 kilometres west of Ipswich. For those of you who can do the arithmetic, next year marks 150 years of that story here in Queensland, so there are some celebratory activities planned for that. Obviously, that is the starting point. There were over 10,000 people who worked at this site over the next 150 years, many of which obviously lived in the Ipswich community and still live in the Ipswich community. It built over 200 steam locomotives for use in Queensland, but importantly also 11,000 wagons, umpteen, and just about everything else the railway needed for its expansion across the state. So it was a very significant site that really powered the growth and economic development of much of Queensland, really through until about the 1960s or 70s. It was still fully operational until the late 1990s, and this is a remarkable story. There were still about 1,000 people working here in 1995, at which point Queensland Rail decided to consolidate their railway workshops at the more modern railway workshops in Redbank, about 5 kilometres away, and then the question was asked as to what to do with this site. There were a number of competing opportunities, but it was settled that it become a museum. Why is it important? Certainly it is a rare example of large-scale railway workshops and large-scale industrial heritage. All the other major railway workshops around Australia have either closed or been demolished or been turned into or had other uses, put to other uses in that time. This is the only one that still operates, and still undertakes the work of maintaining and repairing steam locomotives. And in fact, you too, if you've got your checkbook in hand, can order a new boiler for a locomotive and it could be built in these workshops. It does demonstrate the evolution of Queensland's rail history, and of course we've got the Queensland Heritage Register and on the Register of the National Estate. And the historical images there just give you some sense of the richness of the site, but there's certainly much more to it as well. So the Workshops Rail Museum today occupies a very small portion of the site. So the blue bit at the bottom of that slide is in fact what is the museum, and the balance of the site is still largely retained by Queensland Rail for the operating heritage fleet. And if you've taken a walking tour through the workshops, you go into some of those spaces and you see that work occurring. Just keep a note of that slide because it is one of our future opportunities is to work through, I guess, what else happens with the remaining buildings on that site in the coming years. Today, the museum experience is 16 different exhibitions that tell the story and the impact of rail. It's not so much the technical story of, you know, this locomotive had this cylinder pressure and this diameter, and then it progressed to this. It's about the stories. And so, as Mark said this morning, it's the stories that people remember, the hard work, the innovation, and the other aspects of Queensland's rail story that are represented through those exhibitions. The actual workshops, and this consistently comes back in our visitor surveys as the highlight of the experience of seeing real people doing real work and talking to you about it. And so that tour through the workshops, as I said, you go into either the blacksmith shop or the steam shop, led by a Queensland Rail worker or a former Queensland Rail worker who can talk to you about the detail of what is actually being undertaken in that space. The other part of our program is our events program, and I think rail museum directors the world over thank their lucky stars for Reverend Audrey in producing a book called Thomas, and certainly Day Out with Thomas is a major way we can bring new audiences into the museum. The most frequent response we get is, we came for Thomas, we didn't realise it was so fantastic, and we're coming back again. And so Thomas, as our annual event, for those of you who've been out there for Thomas, know it's a bit manic during that time with lots of little kids, but it does bring us people who would not otherwise honestly set foot in a rail museum. So they come, they take out a membership, and they come back for some of our other programs throughout the year, and it gives us a consistent audience to talk to. We have a range of school holiday programs like any other museum that certainly provide regular changing activities as part of the museum. Our annual workers' reunion is the major day in Ipswich, and this is a celebratory day to acknowledge the former workers of the site. That, I guess, is the fortunate thing that many of them are still alive and can come back in and share their stories. This regularly pulls a crowd of somewhere about 3,500 for us on a single day, so it's very successful. And then we engage, obviously, with the model railway community through things like the Model Railway Show as well. Our steam train program we do in partnership with Queensland Rail, and this is where you too can ride on a steam train, and this is the public's most common experience of rail heritage. It is to get on a steam train ride and go somewhere. And generally we run programs either from here in the city, so we don't actually take people anywhere near the museum on our Steam Train Sunday program. Other journeys recreate the trip from Ipswich to Grantchester and back again. And these images just give you some idea of those experiences. For those of you who've been there, you'll recognise where those experiences actually are from in the museum. Today we attract around 87,000 visitors, and I was commenting before over lunch that certainly this is the next most visited museum in the Queensland Museum Network outside of the one here on South Bank. And we have obviously the challenge of a significant admission charge in comparison to some of our other campuses around here. But again, in terms of working with the tourism industry, it is about having a product that you can, a commissionable product that you can put into the marketplace. And as Gillian said, we've had enormous success in the award space. And certainly for me and for the team, this is enormous recognition of the work that we do as a team. We use those awards and engage staff and volunteers with both the preparation and then the celebration when we win those awards. But it all starts from the local, that goes to the state and then goes to the national. So we certainly have a sustained program of entering those awards as a way of benchmarking ourselves and of recognising the efforts that the whole team go to delivering each and every day for our visitors. What's worked well? In my view, certainly it is the mix of products and the range of experiences. It's not just one type of experience. If you like a self-guided tour, you can take yourself around the museum exhibits at your own pace. If you like a guided tour with someone explaining things to you, you can take that. If you like the high energy of Thomas, you can engage in that. So it's that mix of products and range of experiences that means when a family decides to come and visit us, it is exactly, I think, Mark's comment again this morning, of they get there because the kids might have dragged them to, and they find that they're engaged, the adults are engaged as much as the kids as well, and find it really exciting, such that they go away and do exactly what he was talking about in terms of having the elevator conversation or the morning tea conversation about what they did at the weekend. We've also had a sustained program of community engagement, and by that it's again been quite multi-pronged. Our member program now has about 6,800 people signed up for our membership program. This gives us an audience, a regular audience to communicate with, and they are talking to their friends and family. They are on social media. They are sharing their experiences of us. We can post stuff and they will regularly respond and tell us where we're doing well and where we're not doing so well as well. The Workers Club is a new initiative we've implemented, I guess, about 12 months ago now. And this was really to engage with that former workforce. So the only way you can become a member of the Workers Club is that you actually worked on the site. And this was to give us a deeper level of engagement than our annual workers' reunion, but it was what this community was absolutely looking for. It was the opportunity to reconnect both with their former colleagues and the site to share their stories and memories. And we're getting a rich vein of material that we can use for future exhibits, future audio guides, future website stuff, and the whole works out of that. We recognise we've got a limited window here in terms of that former workforce. They are ageing, and so this is a specific initiative, again, to capture those stories so that we can share them, because it is the stories, I can't emphasise that enough, that are the engaging bit of this site. It's a beautiful set of buildings and it's got some great things in it in terms of the locomotives, but it's the stories that really engage with our visitors. And of course our volunteers, again, we couldn't operate without the support of many people in the community who give generously of their time. And as Tom said before, we work with volunteers to deliver the overall experience at the workshops. Some of our future opportunities, and you can go on our website and download this if you're so desirous of reading the many, many pages of our master plan that we prepared in 2011. But what this talks about largely is what is the opportunity for the development of the rest of that precinct. It's a very large precinct and we occupy only a very small proportion of it. So what are the complementary activities that you might seek to develop parts of the site for to, I guess, ensure that the sum of the parts creates a greater whole than each individual part in its own right? The museum's been a great springboard and is a great springboard for that future development of the site. So some of the things that are talked about in that space are around developing more event and function space. It is a venue with a difference. It has all that theming already inbuilt with it. The Integrated Rail Heritage Facility, including the Skills and Training Centre, this one is dear to my heart because, and I guess it is that question of we don't actually, in some regards, recognise the really special qualities that this place has in terms of its capacity to do heritage work on an operating railway. There are some celebrated cases around the world. Some of you might be interested. Flying Scotsman is not the most celebrated or success story restoration project of an iconic locomotive in Europe. Australia has its own story in 3801 from New South Wales, which again is a less than successful restoration story that is still being played out. This site and the capacity of the staff who work on this site, particularly for Queensland Rail, and there are 25 of them, to maintain the skills, knowledge and capacity to both build a boiler, build a steam locomotive and build or rebuild heritage carriages is second to none in the world. And we've got it right here, and I guess the opportunity to recognise that and create a whole industry around that is enormously exciting, a bit terrifying as well on one level, but certainly gives us an enormous opportunity to take this into a whole nother space. For those of you who've been on site, the Powerhouse building up on the hill, which is a bit church-like, has an amazing story to tell in its own right. Queensland's second ever electrical power generating station. So it allows us to extend the story, if you like, into talking about energy in a way that is consistent with the overall heritage of the site. And obviously we're also looking at conference and accommodation space on the site as well, so you too can stay in a railway carriage if you so desire. I was asked to talk about what I think the relevant learnings might be from our experience. Certainly, again, I go back to what Mark said at the start of the morning, understand the audience. We've done a lot of audience research and we continue to do quite a lot of audience research into who our customers are and what they want and what they do and what they're thinking about that. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You can choose to be certain things for certain people, and that's quite okay. We also understand, I think, who we are and who we are not. And so when we select school holiday programs, when we select exhibitions to come in here, when we're determining what our annual program is, it kind of is measured against some of those things of who we are and who we are not. And focus. Again, coming back to who we are and who we are not, but we're very focused around, we are telling a rail heritage story here. We're not trying to tell the story of Ipswich or the story of something, coal mining in Ipswich or whatever it is. We are a rail museum, and that's our focus, and you know what you get when you come in. And I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Cathie Johnston, the Project Manager of Brisbane Marketing Economic Development Board. So Cathie has worked within the South East Queensland tourism industry over the past 6 years, currently with the Brisbane Marketing Economic Development Board as Project Manager for both the Brisbane Greeters Program and Brisbane Welcomes the World G20 Legacy Program. Prior to this role, Cathie was Tourism Development Coordinator for the Scenic Rim Regional Council, guiding, planning and implementation for local and state government initiatives across 400 tourism businesses and 5 visitor information centres. Cathie has also previously worked within the Northern New South Wales tourism and events industry environment. Please make her welcome, Cathie Johnston.
Well, thank you very much for such a warm welcome, everybody. I am feeling so very lucky to be here today. My project coordinator, Sophie, is here with me, and we've been learning so much. When the State Library contacted us and said, would you like to come along and be part of a Heritage Tourism Symposium, we said, you betcha. Okay, and we've thought about nothing since. We just had to get through the G20 first. So here we are. So hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Brisbane. How's your experience going so far? Yes, so you might have guessed it by our title there, Brisbane Greeters. That is in fact what we do. We welcome people to Brisbane. So who do we welcome, in fact? Well, we welcome everyone, whether you're a local, a new resident, an international student, a visitor that's here for leisure, pleasure, or business, if you're a short stay corporate. All of these people are finding us, or we're finding them, and taking them on about a 2 to 4 hour orientation experience right around our beautiful destination of Brisbane. So we're a bunch of storytellers, you could say, and we're going to introduce some of them to you in a few short minutes. And we play a very important role, though, in helping people find their way around Brisbane and really showing them how accessible our fantastic destination actually is. So we actually activate public transport in a very big way along the way. Now, apart from those new residents and tourists that we welcome, sometimes we also get to welcome those that are a little bit more famous than others. And we have a lot of fun in everything that we do, but particularly with some of these visitors. But before I take you along that little pathway, I'd like to ask you a question. Who is this gentleman arriving and reporting for duty in Brisbane? MacArthur. Now, back in the World War II days, we would have had a bit of a challenge ahead of us if Brisbane Greeters were tasked with this challenge to actually welcome MacArthur to Brisbane. And of course, the reason being that the military intelligence of the day, they're pretty clever, and they started a whispering campaign, didn't they? So thousands of locals across Brisbane, before MacArthur had even transitioned, from Melbourne up to Brisbane as he was relocating his office during World War II, were convinced through this whispering campaign that he was already here. And there are all these stories doing the rounds in Brisbane that, we've seen him and we saw his wife and we like her shoes. They all were in the know first and foremost. But of course, what did they actually do? They had him arrive very early in the morning at South Brisbane Station, and they put him in a car and they whisked him off to his hotel. And how many local people actually got to meet him, to greet him, to welcome him? Not one actually saw him come into Brisbane. Now, we worked really closely with the MacArthur Museum, and we developed up World War II themed greet trails around the city of Brisbane. And that's how I know those sorts of stories, and all of our greeters are so engaged with these sorts of stories. And we worked with them on the 70th anniversary event for the arrival of MacArthur into Brisbane. So we toured probably around 300 people when we spent time with them in King George Square on that day, around that trail. And ever since then, and getting that story to the likes of Tourism Events Queensland, we've been attracting particularly American visitors to Brisbane, and we've been getting a lot of media coverage over in America for that particular trail. When people come and experience that with a greeter, we find that they, of course, want to spend more than 4 hours with that greeter, because we find we're actually changing their lives. They're here because they want to connect with, the stories of their fathers, grandfathers, and so on, who were stationed here during World War II. And so, moving right along, that little event that we've all heard of recently occurred, and quite successfully and thankfully safely here in Brisbane, and it was the friendly G20. Now, how times have changed. 26 world leaders here in Brisbane for the G20. Now, who knew about that? Was it a secret? It wasn't a big secret at all, was it? Everybody seemed to know, and they said, no pressure, but Brisbane is going to be the centre of the world's attention for those 3 days. And where do you think our trusty Brisbane greeters were? Well, they were right there, stationed at South Bank actually, for the entire 3 days, even in the heat. They were taking people on walks through the parklands. They were there inviting media to jump on a cruise boat and showcasing Brisbane and doing live transmissions, sometimes, to an audience of 30 million people over in India. So they were really showcasing our fantastic destination to the world. However, what a lot of people didn't know, because we had some of the best kept secrets, not even the media knew about this. So think about it, if you were actually at home watching all of that media coverage, they didn't miss anything, did they? No stone was left unturned. think about this. This is Greeter Blair Alsop. He does a lot of work now with Great South East, and he also has his own radio show on 4BC because the media and audiences around Brisbane and Queensland find him to be quite a fantastic and engaging storyteller. And we had some requests come in, of course, directly from the world leader delegations. So throughout all of those goings on and all the media around Brisbane, we snuck greeters off to meet world leaders, and of course had great secrecy around that because of the security of the greeters and the world leaders, of course. There was a lot of security and minders around them. But Greeter Blair Alsop met with the President of the European Council here, the President of the European Union, as you might know it, and his wife. So here we have Herman van Rompuy with Blair down at UQ. Now, what's actually a little bit more interesting about this particular occasion is this. The greet started up in the City Botanic Gardens, and after Blair had shared some stories around the gardens, Herman turns to, the President, Herman turns to Blair and says, "Now, yes, I would still like to go all the way down to the University of Queensland, Blair," he said, "but, you know, with everything that's going on around us, I don't really like all the pomp and ceremony of motorcade, so I'd actually like to experience this city as a local would, as you would living here. So how can you get me there in the normal way?" So Blair said, "Okay, sure. How about a ride on a city cat?" And so off they went. They hopped on the city cat, and not one local person or city cat staff picked that they had a world leader on that boat. In fact, we had some greeters, 3 of them in fact, get on that same boat, and the minders all said, "Shh, Blair, you can't tell them." So they walked up to Blair and said, "Oh, are you greeting today?" And he said, Yep, it's just a world leader." And no one spotted it. So off they went to UQ. They got down there successfully, and they toured around the grounds there. We do greets around all of the university campuses. And in the end, the minder said, "Look, we really are going to have to, time constraints, we have to get you back by car. So we've got your motorcade waiting, Mr. President." And so Herman, Mr. President, turns to Blair and he said, "Oh, would you like a ride back into town?" So Blair, he was in his red greeter shirt the whole time, hops into the President's car, and he gets everything, the motorcycles and everything out the front. Now, meanwhile, Sophie and I had finished our shift over at South Bank, and she was heading home, and she sees this motorcade stop just on the outskirts of Brisbane. And she's thinking, "Oh, this is probably about the time that Blair would be coming back, but surely not." Anyway, she turns around. As she's turning around, she sees Blair hop out of the President's car in his red greeter shirt, and there you go. So, the stories and the secrets we can share about events and Brisbane. Now, moving right along, another important partner that we've been working with lately is Oktoberfest Brisbane. This program has been an extraordinary success for Brisbane, and what I would almost like to invite you to do is count how many partners, heritage and events mainly, such dynamic partners in our wonderful industry across this destination who work with us and give us these opportunities and invitations to really build experiences and give people an experience of Brisbane that they do not forget. They can't wait to come back. The media can't wait to publish their stories. They keep saying, "We've been coming here for 26 years, some of them. We've never seen Brisbane from these angles before." Okay, so we've got fantastic, passionate volunteers, but it's really everybody in our industry that's been working with us and bringing these opportunities to us. So in terms of events and the lenses that they provide to activate experiences and stories, and all of the, we've heard about the fantastic Brisbane Open House and the Maryborough Open House and so on earlier today, that's probably the biggest learning that we've had. Okay, so Oktoberfest Brisbane, we worked with their event team in terms of looking at the Lutheran history and the German experience and putting some greet trails there, and we head out to Nunda and so on for those. Now, they contacted us just recently and they said, "Oh, we'd really like you to welcome a really important visitor to Brisbane who's coming out around Oktoberfest." And we said, "Who is that?" And they said, "It's Ludwig Leichhardt." We're like, "Really? How can that be?" And they said, "Yes, it's the 170th anniversary of his, epic expedition across Queensland, and Northern Australia. And so it's his great nephew who's coming across for a very special program of celebrations. And one of the things that they'll be doing is naming the latest, Qantas jet in honour of Leichhardt. So the uncanny thing for us was, that is the original Leichhardt there in the top corner, of course, is the great-great-great-nephew looked so much like the original Leichhardt. It was like we were with him. So we greeted him, we went and met him at his hotel, and of course we have the old windmill tower there as part of the experience, because it would have been one of the only buildings that the original Leichhardt would have seen the last time he visited Brisbane. And of course, here he is sitting with greeter Vivian, who delivered the entire greet in German, because we do have over 25 languages spoken or shared across our team. And can anyone tell me where he's sitting there? It's a special seat, it's not just any seat. I'll give you a clue, it's at Roma Street Parkland. It's the Sir Thomas Brisbane seat, named in honour of all the work that he did in starting the colony of Brisbane. Okay, so back to the actual core purpose of what we do. As I said, we welcome everyone. So it's about really connecting people with Brisbane and getting to really know Brisbane, and of course finding their way around with ease. We want people to make the most of their visit. We don't want them just staying in their hotels and only just walking, a kilometre around their hotel and saying, what is there to do here? We want to make it easy for them, and we want to make it a friendly experience, of course. So we want them to stay longer, we want them to go home and rave about us, and we want them to return. Anyone wants that in tourism. So really our program is based around what we're calling the Brisbane Warm Welcome, and this is also the core of the Australia's New World City brand, and a lot of research that our team's done behind the great destination that we are, and Give Me Brisbane Any Day. You might have heard that tagline recently. So this is the official warm welcome. So I didn't make this up. As I said, it's based on a lot of research. So in Brisbane, we welcome you as our own and ask you to become a part of it, letting you in on our secrets, not just observing through your camera. So what we've learned is something really important, and we think it's really important to cultural and heritage tourism in terms of all being integrated together, because it all seems to link to authenticity and this growing trend around the world for people's desire to have a really authentic tourism experience, particularly when they're visiting urban destinations. They really want to get underneath the city's skin, and they want to connect with a local, and they want to experience that city or that place as though they are a local. So they want to be highly immersed and connected. That's a really important thing to remember. So we had some research provided to us also by the National Geographic magazine, and they actually refer to that trend as untourism, okay, because they want to experience a place like a local, not a tourist. Now, the evidence of that growing trend you can actually see through the Global Greeter Network. So we're not alone. Brisbane City Council and Brisbane Marketing didn't think of this concept on our own. It actually all started in New York with the Big Apple Greeters about 25 years ago. They're still going and very, very successful, and we connect with them all the time. So we launched in early 2012, and we were the 27th city. Right now, there's over 85 programs. In Australia, there's one in Melbourne and Adelaide. Sydney is calling us all the time and saying, Brisbane, how do we do this? We want to get a greeter program started in Sydney. And the head of the Global Greeter Network visited us recently in Brisbane because his brother lives at Cairns, so over he came, and he said there's about 300 to 400 applications waiting on my desk for us to process when I get back. So people want to meet locals, and they want locals in their experience. And so the link. Every other person presenting here today has talked about the stories. And really, what are the stories based around? And I've heard people say it's not stuff, it is the people. When George was telling all those fantastic stories earlier about what had happened inside the buildings and who had slept there in the toilet and so on, it was about the people. We're just always curious about people. So there's no rocket science, but it is really about authentic experience. And with Brisbane Marketing, because we are the Regional Tourism Authority as well as the Economic Development Board, we are really about using this program to bring the destination identity to life and all of the destination experience. So there was a question before about, how do you also celebrate the contemporary experience with the heritage? It's about that integration. So people do order up sometimes a heritage experience, but along the way, of course, they They might experience some public art. They might also experience parks and gardens, and all along they're talking to the greeter about what it's like to live here, and they stop halfway and they go to one of our beautiful new cafes and sit down and have a chat and enjoy a coffee. So it's about that whole experience, but it's very, very authentic. So it's the personal interpretive experience when you're looking at us as a local tourism ambassador program, and it is really about reflecting people, story and place and connection. So in terms of the value that we bring to Brisbane's brand story and the visitor perceptions about Brisbane, it is immense and very, very exciting. So just very quickly, some of our learnings, of course, come from our visitors, of course. This gives us a lot of intelligence about people in Brisbane and what they think of us, because, you know, for years people have said, oh, Brisbane's a gateway, you know, Queensland, you know, sometimes they're a bit like Fiji. People are desperate to get up to the beaches and across to the islands. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic, because Queensland is a paradise, you know, one of the most beautiful places, not only in Australia, but the world. At Brisbane, you know, capital city, it's the cultural and heritage heart, really. And so people have said, you never really know a place until you know its capital. And we're seeing the success through this program and through the hard work of all of our partners, bringing this to the fore. And that's what's really exciting. So maybe not a surprise to you, but so many, particularly international visitors, comment straight away about how clean we are. They continually tell us we never realised there was so much here, because they've had that perception that we're a gateway. Now they're starting to see that we're stickier. This is all because we're actually just showing them around. It's a lovely free service of local people, but we're actually engaging them and entertaining them with the stories of the place, and it's coming to life and they are loving it. So in the moment, they are forgetting that they're on holiday, and remember, that's the end goal for us. The beauty of the city, particularly, it's not just when they go up to Mount Cootha, but it's when they get out on the river. They just cannot believe that, and they say, wow, we would have actually even given Sydney or even Melbourne a miss. Nobody told us how beautiful it is. We would have stayed so much longer. We're certainly coming back, and we're telling everybody else to come here. They can't believe how easy it is to get around. You know, we've got all that free public transport. You just need to know where to get on, okay, and where the stops are to get off at, and so on. If you've got that local guide there, it is very, very easy. And importantly for us here in Brisbane, you know, how small we are geographically in terms of our inner CBD and surrounding precincts, it's our accessibility and all of that coordinated public transport. We are one of the most accessible cities in the world, and because of that we can get people up the river, back in, you know, on a bus, or take a city cycle, and because of all of our bridges you can walk people around. And when you really think about that, if you walked back here from the cultural precinct, think about all of your options to get back to the CBD today and how long it would take you. It is such an easy, beautiful city to walk around, and of course everyone thinks we're so friendly, which is a huge competitive advantage. People are always saying, market the welcome. But it's not just that we're friendly, it's also that we've got these knowledgeable, passionate locals, because at the end of the day, it's your volunteer community, of course, that is reflective very much so of the health of your community, and for us it's in our brand. In Brisbane's brand, it's all about people, and Give Me Brisbane Any Day is an attitude to say we are so proud of Brisbane, we are ready to take the wraps off, we invite you in, these are our secrets, and away we go. We keep that journey and adventure going. So we're pretty flexible, intimate and tailored. So Sophie's handed out some of the flyers there, so you can really see what we offer. Any of you can book a greet at any time. It's free. We'd love to show you around Brisbane. And you can either book a greeter's choice, where the greeter obviously will still check in with you and ask what it is you'd like to see for that half a day. And they meet you at Brisbane City Hall, and then off you go. And you'll see the eyes purely through the city through the eyes of that local person. But they're very well versed and across, you know, a variety of precincts and special interests. So you'll go out with no more than 6 people, and that's what we mean by intimate. So there's lots of time to get to know your greeter and other visitors and ask them questions. Or you can do a your choice, which is just about you and your family or partner or relatives going out on your own with that greeter, and you can order up your experience. So of course, the good news for this audience is that heritage is always, you know, like in the top 3, but what they love to do is combine that, as I was saying, with public art or parks and gardens or some World War II, you know, stories together with that as a combined experience. So this is what visitors are actually saying. So as I said, we offer the program even to locals. So someone here has said that even after living here for 3 years, this greet has opened my eyes to a new Brisbane. Couldn't believe it. We get so much positive feedback. I've worked for a lot of businesses and a lot of events and, in the bio, local government and so on. I've never had so much positivity about any tourism experience ever before in my career or a place, okay? So I don't want to leave Brisbane any day soon. And in terms of through the international visitors' eyes, it's that love of the city and making my trip truly unforgettable. It's so rich and magical than I ever could have seen on my own. And the media, well, there's so much media feedback, and they're always dropping in on our Facebook and so on and tweeting in about us, about our greeters, importantly, in terms of how amazing their experience was. So we're getting phenomenal coverage, as I said earlier, but the media actually voted us in onto the 50 Things We Love About Travel Right Now list, and that's Sydney Morning Herald and Melbourne Age. It's not the local media. So our background, yes, we are a program of council. We're seed funded by council for the first 4 years, so we're on our way to becoming financially sustainable. We're growing this investment for the community and local economy. It's actually an initiative of Council's 20-year economic development plan, and what we've achieved so far is down the bottom if you want some quantitative data around everything. So in a very short period of time, we have a team of 200 greeters, incredibly passionate, dynamic volunteers. Most of them would be over the age of 60. We do have probably around 10 to 15% uni students or aged between 20 to 30. And from basically all different occupations, from pharmacists to university lecturers to accountants to recently retired, real estate directors and so on. It goes on and on and on. So the skills capacity within this team, Sophie and I are so privileged to work with people that just bring so much to the destination, experience and to our team's learning and to the learning of our organisation at Brisbane Marketing. So over 20,000 visitors to this point in time. And the publicity, it just goes on and on and on. That's not even the figure after the G20. So importantly, with that $20 million in publicity, that's millions and millions in terms of audience numbers, of course, all around the world, as well as so much regular media. So it's raising the awareness about Brisbane and our story overall. So the greatest secret to greeter success, greeter passion. People ask me about all this all the time. We have greeters that come in for different events and briefings and so on at the BM office, and our staff, our team always say to us, "Why do you feed those people? They've just made my day. They were just in the lift. I didn't actually even talk to them except to say hello, but they're so confident and vibrant and positive." And so these are people who, we don't have to do too much to win them over. They already love Brisbane, but we approach it right from that interview at the get-go that you are about to embark on a wonderful adventure of discovery. And let's face it, the volunteer market's a pretty competitive one. They might have gone to 3 or 4 other organisations before they hit our table. And away we go, and we make sure that, that we are the right fit for them, as well as vice versa. So this whole thing about tourists in their own backyard, yes, they become that, but it's really about, the greeters get new eyes because of the stories that they learn from each other and from having a really purposeful visit into the city with the volunteering work that they do. But what the greeters keep telling us is that they just get the biggest kick out of seeing the reaction of other locals and visitors, and that, hearing those stories, seeing their excitement. And so it just keeps feeding that passion. It's certainly not going to stop anytime soon. So based on all that intelligence from the greeter program, we were then invited to put together a bigger welcome strategy around the G20 event. And we wrapped a lot of those greeter stories into that destination welcome package. So over 2,000 people completed that program in a few short months. It was so successful, even the G20 task force says, yes, we would like that. We want all of our staff to do that. We also want greeters out as part of our induction program with new staff. We want them training all the senior liaison officers that are working with the staffers. And could you please come and work with delegations and actually meet and tour world leaders? So it was a huge success. And when we say a legacy program, it means that there's different parts of the region and events, and obviously some linkages to the future Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, but a bigger welcoming and wayfinding strategy around all of that, and away we go. There's some great principles behind that program that can bring our entire destination to life, and certainly again through major events. And speaking of major events and other exercises, I'm just going to wrap up very quickly now. You might have heard about some of this already. Our council invited us to actually deliver their rededication tours program after City Hall was refurbed and restored and so on, and then we worked with them on their reopening event and delivered those tours, to thousands of local people who had contributed money, and we were handing the keys basically back. It was community handing that back to the community. So very, very powerful exercise. And of course now it's the fantastic Museum of Brisbane that run all those tours. So in partnership with them, we then put together these World Expo 25th Anniversary Legacy Greets Trails, which at the time the Museum of Brisbane had this fantastic World Expo exhibition, and they needed us to work with them to help activate and make people aware that this was their new headquarters again, back in the Museum of Brisbane there. So we would always deposit them back there, as we do with the World War II theme greets, back to the MacArthur Museum. This was all about not only the legacy of Expo with a lot of public art and so on, but also about Brisbane's fantastic journey. It was about a lot of local people essentially coming out and having a reason to walk around the city. And they did get very nostalgic, but they were actually quite surprised as we walked them through Roma Street parklands to see the beauty of those parklands and to hear all of those different stories. It was like, wow, this is what our city's now become. The other thing that we've done, council invited us to actually develop the Walter Taylor Bridge pylon tours, so you're welcome to come and do one of these. These are also free. If you've ever driven over that bridge and seen the washing and wanted to scratch that itch and see inside, we've gotten to know all about the family's story and what it was like to really live inside that bridge pylon. But I guess as we were doing the experience development and all the research around this, and a lot of our greeters worked with council's, heritage department, we learnt about the extraordinary history and story of that part of the Brisbane River. So we actually do a Walter Taylor Bridge precinct tour, and of course there's more bridges than just the Walter Taylor Bridge there, which sometimes surprises people. And then of course we learnt so much about the visionary that Walter Taylor was, and just how incredible that man was, and his legacy, phenomenal. So we have an extended greet that takes you to his old house, the Gables in Graceville, and we showcase a lot of his architectural legacy and talk about how he raised money from the community to even build the bridge in the first place. And that is amazing, and it's how we also activate another precinct that's a little bit further afield from the CBD, but it's a rich, authentic lifestyle experience for visitors. So not only locals now book that, we have a lot of international visitor interest in going out that way. And of course, the exciting thing for us, we've long been partners with the fantastic Brisbane Open House. And this year, because we'd actually activated an actual heritage site for council, Brisbane Open House invited us to actually then put that onto the Brisbane Open House program. So greeters normally volunteer and are dispersed around the various buildings around Brisbane, and that's part of their training program. And now this year we could actually give something back even more to Brisbane Open House and the people of Brisbane and the visitors coming for that fantastic event. And if we can see more of those around Queensland, I can't wait to get to the Maryborough one and the Toowoomba one. Just fantastic. So I was asked just to very quickly summarise as well why we do have such happy volunteer greeters. So I also asked some of the greeters, and this is what they told us, that we do have a realistic commitment level. They do no more than 2 a month. Some of them do a lot more than that, but that's because that's voluntary. They put their hands up to do that. A lot of the media greets and so on are over, and above that commitment with visitors. We communicate really clearly and have really clear expectations, so no one's ever, not knowing what it is they have to do. They say they feel very supported. So we make sure we've got effective training support. The last thing in the world that we want a volunteer is going, oh my gosh, do we have to get to know all of that about Brisbane, and do we have to know everything there is to know about Brisbane? And it's like, of course not. We keep them on the things that they're passionate about, and they can pick and choose, and they build their journey as they see fit. And they're very, very supported by our fantastic team the whole way through. It's the variety in the work, the input that we have with the greeters from the get-go. They develop a lot of these experiences. They sit around with the event teams and so on a lot of the time from the very inception of our special exercises. And we also seek feedback ongoing from our greeters, and we make sure we listen to that and that we continually improve the program. The validation that comes with being a greeter, the recognition and appreciation. We have a lot of husband and wife teams. It's Ian and Ali there at the top at their birthday, the greeter birthday, hence the roses, and of course Lynn and Sue at our Christmas party. The training support, we do have a fantastic induction program. They now do the Brisbane Welcomes the World program. We have itinerary starter, support pack notes, so they get to choose their special interest or a precinct, because you might just want to go to Tenerife or just to Bulimba, and we can certainly do that. They go out and they observe experienced greeters with visitors. So they do at least 3 observation greets before they then take their own. We have greeter mentors and specialists in, some that are just really into the World War II history, for example, or they've lived at Bulimba and have a great passion for that precinct. So they invite other greeters to come out on special training exercises. We run our familiars as a social team activity, and we share loads of ideas. They're always saying, have you read this book? Have you been onto this website? Have you heard this story? They just entertain each other. It's a lot of fun to be at those. And of course, our involvement in events, they're so committed. That's them doing some laneway public art training in the rain. So in summary, the greeter satisfaction is high, and as a result, obviously, the customer satisfaction is extremely high, because we are in a very fortunate position at Brisbane Marketing to be able to have the ongoing rewards integrated with program outcomes. But really, in essence, we see ourselves as a social club. At the end of the day, people want to have some fun, don't we? But we do have that shared meaning and purpose. So we are a very big and growing network for learning and enjoying our fantastic Brisbane and Brisbane region. And now we are out on Straddie. That all started with the fantastic exhibition on Moreton Bay at the Museum of Brisbane recently, and then they went in the draw after completing a quiz to actually go and have a day's famil over at Stradbroke Island so they can actually even tell people how to get out there and what there is to do. So that's part of our stay longer in the region plans, and that's us at a cooking school of all places. So we cover all the bases. So that's a wrap from me. Thank you very much and kindly for your attention, and I look forward to talking to you a little bit more later.
Thanks, Cathie. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker. Tony Martin was appointed as CEO of Qantas Foundation Memorial and Qantas Foundation Fundraising in 2012. Tony has worked in the Australian tourism industry for the past 16 years, including with the highly successful tourism ventures such as Sydney Harbour's Bridge Climb and Brisbane Story Bridge Adventure Climb. Tony's driven by a desire to achieve excellence and professionalism. He applies this standard to the Qantas Founders Museum by fostering a team, culture and strengthening relationships with local community, value adding to the customer's experience and making the museum a place that people keep returning to. In 2011, Tony was awarded a Management Excellence Award for Rural Remote Manager of the Year by AIM. Please make him very welcome, Tony Martin from Qantas Founders Museum.
Thank you. Good afternoon, how are you all? Welcome to the Queensland and Northern Territory Aerial Services, or Qantas as you probably would know it. My lovely colleague here down, Andrew, asked you to put the hand up if you'd been to his wonderful museum. How many of you have been out to Longreach to visit the Qantas Founders Museum? Fantastic. I had to wear my coat because it's, Brisbane weather's pretty chilly compared to what we're experiencing out there. Those of you who haven't been out there, it's just a short drive west of Brisbane. It's about 1,200 kilometres. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We're not owned or operated or managed by Qantas. We're a community project. And it's been a project that's been growing since 1996. We're the proud custodians of a National Heritage listed building. It's a beautiful little old tin shed up there, the very first Qantas hangar. I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint. I've just got some wonderful photos of our establishment rotating in the background, so please don't look at me, look at these lovely pictures. We're more than a museum, we're more than a heritage site. We're actually really community focused, and it's our community that's almost first and foremost in our mind. However, being custodians of such a wonderful story and a wonderful collection, it's often how we do that and how we tell that story. And we've heard some wonderful things this afternoon and this morning from some fantastic presenters. We've got a number of things happening at the museum. We do guided tours of some fabulous aircraft. So you can access aircraft and things within aircraft that you can't do anywhere else in the world. But the stories that are associated with that is just phenomenal. a people story. We're not just about aircraft and aviation. We're a story about the struggles of the tyranny of distance, and how a couple of amazing young men had the foresight and the vision to get our national airline up and running. And 2020 will see 100 years of Qantas, and we know they're seeing a few difficulties at the moment. Let's hope they're there to celebrate that. Being where we're located, it's very important how we market ourselves, the products, how we tell that story, not just our story. We have to be really, really creative and inventive in being collaborative in our story. People are not driving, and a large portion of our market, almost 89–90% of our market, come by road. Grey nomads, towing the little turtles behind them. I'm sure some of you have been stuck behind them before, and isn't that fun? We love them. We love them. We see 35,000 to 40,000 visitors through our wonderful museum every year. I employ 35 staff at full season when we're running full bore, and that's during winter time, which equates to about $1 million in wages. And we all know that 4-time multiplier. What that does for our local economy is phenomenal. We've heard about pillars of industry today. We've got 2 major pillars of industry in the outback. One of them is struggling absolutely terribly at the moment. I'm sure you're aware of the terrible drought we're having out there. The other is tourism. Tourism is a real economic driver. Those 35,000 to 40,000 visitors, their average length of stay and what they spend in town equates to a little over $10 million spent straight back into our community. So it's quite an important thing we're doing out there. So how do we keep ourselves active, keen, attractive? We've had to look at diversifying elements of the business from time to time, and that's really thinking outside the square sort of stuff. You identify the stories we have. So if you look at our founders, for example, and their story, these Paul McGuinness and Sir Hudson Fysh, they both fought together at Gallipoli. They were both in No. 1 Squadron, Air Squadron. There's a whole new link of a story there just about these 2 amazing men and how we diversify their story into telling a war story, and all that's happening with the centenary of the Anzacs at the moment. So we're often looking at different ways of diversifying. We never get away from our core story, which is, as I've mentioned, telling the story of those founders. But it's how you engage new markets, and we've heard about a lot of that today as well. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to talk to your visitors, haven't you? We do that by face-to-face. Our tour guides, when they take in groups of 40 people out on the tour, it's like, so, we've heard this today. Why are you here? What are you interested in? What's your story? What's your story is something that we created. It takes it a little step further. We might pick up a little bit of information from one of our visitors, and they'll say, and our guides are keen listeners. They listen. Guiding's great. I mean, you're telling your story, but the silence in tour guiding is most important, because that's when you hear people talk. That's when you get that valuable feedback. So what's your story is something we created where it allows people to tell their story, and we give them a medium to do that, either via our website, social media, or when they're having a cup of tea and something lovely in our award-winning McGuinness's restaurant. We sit down and we get them to fill it out, and they'll actually share that story so we can follow up. And we've had some fantastic stories and exhibitions born from these stories that people are there. Unless you ask them why they're there and what their connection is, you're going to be missing so much, and it's just phenomenal, the things that have come to the surface for us. Also, we've diversified in how we use the museum. We utilise our facilities, functions and events. So I said to you before, we're more than a community. More than a museum. We're a community focus. If you probably saw on the news yesterday, maybe Longreach broke, I think, a record, having 12 consecutive days, and I think 13 days today of temperatures over 40 degrees. Hence the 30 degrees here. I'm wearing a coat. We have great patronage from our community all year round, and usually they can't wait till some of our community, till the tourists have gone, and they can come in and enjoy the facility. So we've diversified by using our restaurant, doing themed dinners. We also thought about what are people starving for out in the bush, apart from a bloody good drop of rain at the moment. It's other cultural elements. So we bring out performances. We've had Queensland Opera. Just recently we've had the Queensland Symphony Orchestra. We've had exhibitions through Goma for children, a boy named Sai, which was great, and we had some really good interaction with some schools and school groups and children. Again, it's about listening to your community, understanding what they want, and then helping collaboratively to deliver. We had a jazz festival, and we got some great jazz artists out, and I remember somebody coming up to me, little old Mrs. DeClute. She's about 89 years young, and she's just come up to me and said, "Tony, thank you, thank you, thank you. We've been starving out here for stuff like this." And it's not rocket science, it's pretty easy to do. Another key to our success is empowering community, designing a culture that everybody can be part of. And culture, that word's thrown around a lot, but unless you actually work hard to develop a culture, maintain that culture and sustain that culture, it's not going to work. We do that by, again, talking to our community, involving them. It has to start at grassroots. So I meet with my team once a month. We have our staff team meeting, and it's about informing them about what I'm doing and at board level with my board of directors, sharing that information with them and saying, "Hey, what do you think?" And you'd be amazed what comes back, and I take that back to the board and I say, "Hey, you know what? Bruce, my maintenance guy, had this fantastic idea." And they're like, "Wow." And it's sharing that idea, empowers people, involves them, creates a great working culture. We've designed a few years back, we went to our local schools and we said, "Hey, what are you doing around tourism?" And they said, "Well, not too much, what's it actually about? Is it this, is it that? It's all encompassing, isn't it, tourism?" So we started talking to schools about some education in tourism, because it's one of those major industries in our region. So we developed the Cert 3 Tourism and Hospitality Certificate. I went in and worked with some of the teachers, and so I was trained as an assessor in that area way back, and it's been a really successful program now. So we're engaging and we're investing in children and young people that will come through and work within our industry, and that's absolutely vital. So it's about, I guess, having that what's happening today, but thinking about what's happening tomorrow. Who's going to supersede me in years to come, and will they be able to pick the ball up and run with it? So most importantly, we share IP. We're not Coca-Cola. We're not giving away the recipe, that secret recipe. We're not in a large centre like Brisbane where there's a coffee shop, there's a coffee shop, there's a coffee shop, there's a coffee shop, there's a coffee shop. And each one of those little entities, they've got to do something quite unique that next door neighbour's not doing. No, we're not like that. We share our intellectual property. If my neighbour across the road, or John Elliott up there, g'day John, from Winton, if he's doing well and he's practising those successful practices that we have and our neighbour has, the region's doing well. So we actually share that IP. We have people approach us and say, "Oh, what's your customer service techniques? Come on in. Come and sit in on one of our training sessions, on all of our training sessions, and take those training modules away with you, develop them and use them in your own business." And these are the things we need to do, and we have to do as a region. And I encourage you to do that. We think holistically. It's an industry. It's something that needs to thrive and grow as an industry. And if we're all showing all our secrets and sharing it all, we're all heading in the right direction, are going to succeed. I've often, so a little bit about my background, I suppose. I kind of fell accidentally into tourism. You probably tell from my accent, I'm from a little island just on the northern hemisphere, the UK. I arrived in Australia in 1997 and was lucky enough to, I had a bit of a teaching background and military background before that. I don't know which was easy, actually. But I was lucky to work on the Sydney Harbour Bridge climb, and in 1998 when that was starting and be part of that setup, and what an amazing ride that was. There I was on one of the most iconic structures in Australia, in one of the most beautiful harbours, and there I was, before I came to Australia, I was quite interested in some Indigenous history and the Indigenous history of this country, BC, before Cook, and it was on the Sydney Harbour Bridge climb that I developed an Indigenous interpretation and manual for our tour guides there, and carried that forward. Then went on to the Story Bridge adventure climb, where I was asked to help set the Story Bridge adventure climb up here in Brisbane. So it was great, from one heritage icon to the next, and now Qantas. My friends call me an icon slut, being in the bush and working for a museum, an organisation like the Qantas Founders Museum, is so different to those attractions. It has to be, because of its geographical location, and again, that community is everything. I think engaging new audiences by identifying your target market, then tailoring your interpretation to meet that market is key. So just think about that for a while. We can be many things to many people, and I think if you think about how you might engage with, Andrew's museum, you might engage with train enthusiasts, but it's children, it's people who are interested in mechanics, in science, in physics, in engineering. There's so many ways we can broaden who we tap into, and I think it's just having a bit of a creative mind. And look, I'd love to talk to you more about that. I've tried to cram as much as I can into my 15 minutes of fame. Thanks for listening to us, and if you want me to share some more of this, then just give me a bell, because I'm happy to share. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Tony. Because we're running way over time, we're going to have to skip the Q&A, I'm sorry, but we'll go straight to afternoon tea outside, and I'm sure our speakers, Andrew, Cathie and Tony, will be happy to take any of your questions on an informal basis. But I'd just like to say thank you very much to our speakers for that session. It was fantastic. We'll see you back in here in 20 minutes. Thank you.